The vampire king's blood-stained fingers traced the edge of the treaty document as he remembered the face of the girl who had wandered into his territory 3 nights ago, her heartbeat still echoing in his memory like a forbidden song. Qarith Silvanus had ruled the Noctis clan for 4 centuries, and in all that time he had never once faltered in his hatred for the Crawford bloodline. The humans who called themselves the Sovereign Guard had hunted his kind since the medieval ages, driving vampires underground, forcing them into the shadows even as the modern world grew bright with electric lights and technology. The Crawfords led that charge with religious fervor, generation after generation, raised to believe that vampires were nothing more than demons in beautiful shells. He should have killed her the moment she stumbled through the concealed entrance to the Court of Shadows, the underground palace hidden beneath the city's oldest cathedral. She had been lost, genuinely lost, her phone dead and her sense of direction turned around in the maze of tunnels that most humans couldn't even perceive. The wards should have kept her away, but somehow this girl had slipped through them like water through cupped hands. Zariah Crawford. He had known her name within seconds of her arrival, had smelled the familiar blood that ran through her veins, that distinctive scent that marked her as enemy, as prey, as everything he should despise. 22 years old. Graduated from university just last spring, working at a museum while she figured out what to do with her degree in art history. The youngest daughter of Marcus Crawford, the current leader of the Sovereign Guard, she had no idea what her family truly did. That much had been clear from the moment she spoke. "I'm so sorry to intrude," she had said, her voice shaking slightly as she took in the cavernous hall with its soaring ceilings and the ethereal glow of the luminescent crystals that lit the space. "I was exploring the cathedral archives for research, and I must have taken a wrong turn. Is this some kind of historical site? I've never seen architecture like this." Qarith had stood in the shadows, watching her. His court members had frozen, waiting for his command to seize her, to eliminate the threat. But he had raised one pale hand, stopping them. He had wanted to see what she would do, this little Crawford girl who looked at his world with wonder instead of fear. Her hair had been dark as midnight, falling in waves past her shoulders. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, bright and curious. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, a backpack slung over one shoulder. Everything about her screamed ordinary, human, fragile. And yet she had walked into the heart of vampire territory without flinching. "You should not be here," he had finally said, stepping into the light. He remembered the way her eyes had widened when she saw him, not with recognition of what he was, but with something else. Awe, perhaps, or artistic appreciation. She had stared at him the way she might stare at a masterpiece in a gallery, taking in his alabaster skin, his hair white as fresh snow that fell past his shoulders, his crimson eyes that marked him as one of the ancient ones. He wore the clothes of his station, elegant and timeless black silk and silver threading that spoke of old money and older power. "You're stunning," she had whispered, then immediately flushed. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. You look like you walked out of a Renaissance painting. Are you part of some historical society? Is this a restoration project?" Her innocence had been almost painful. Here she stood, in a room full of vampires, and she saw only beauty and history. "Something like that," he had replied, moving closer. His court had stirred uneasily, but he ignored them. "What is your name?" "Zariah Crawford. I work at the Metropolitan Museum. I've been researching the cathedral's history for an exhibition we're planning. There were rumors of hidden chambers, but I never imagined." She gestured around them, her enthusiasm overriding her caution. "This is incredible. The preservation is remarkable. How is this not a major historical landmark? Some histories are meant to stay hidden," Qarith had said softly. He had stood close enough now to hear her heartbeat, steady and strong, close enough to smell the sweet warmth of her blood, close enough to see the pulse in her throat. "You are Marcus Crawford's daughter." She had blinked, surprised. "You know my father? Are you involved with his security company?" "Security company." That's what they told her. That Marcus Crawford ran a private security firm that dealt with international threats. In a way, it wasn't a lie. They just neglected to mention that the threats were supernatural, and the methods were stakes and silver and fire. "I know of him." Qarith had replied carefully. "You should go, Zariah Crawford. This place is not safe for you. Will you show me the way out? I'm completely turned around." He should have had someone else escort her. He should have erased her memory with a touch of compulsion and sent her on her way, ensuring she never found the entrance again. Instead, he had personally guided her through the tunnels, listening to her talk about art and history, about her passion for uncovering lost stories. She had chattered nervously, filling the silence, and he had found himself reluctant to silence her. At the exit, she had turned to him with a smile that had struck him like a physical blow. "Thank you. I hope I see you again. Maybe you could tell me more about this place?" "For my research?" "That would not be wise," he had told her. "Why not?" "Because our families are enemies, and I should have killed you the moment you entered my domain." He hadn't said that, of course. Instead, he had simply watched her go, disappearing into the rainy night, and told himself it was over. But then she had come back. The second time had been intentional. She had found the entrance again, slipping through the wards with that same inexplicable ease. She had brought a notebook and a camera, asked permission before taking any photos. She had questions about the architecture, the symbols carved into the stone, the age of the construction, and Qarith, against every instinct and centuries of wisdom, had answered them. Not truthfully, not entirely. But he had spoken to her, had watched the way her face lit up when she understood some new detail, had felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time stir in his chest. The third visit had been 2 nights ago. That was when everything changed. Now, standing in his private chambers, Qarith crushed the treaty document in his fist. The paper detailed terms of engagement between the vampire clans and the Sovereign Guard, rules written in blood and maintained through fear. Rule 7 was clear. Any fraternization between the species was punishable by death for both parties. "My king," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Lucien Devereaux, his second in command, stood in the doorway. His expression was troubled, his white hair tied back in a severe style that emphasized the sharp angles of his face. "The council requests your presence. They've heard rumors about the Crawford girls' visits." "Let them wait," Qarith said coldly. "They're calling for her death. Marcus Crawford's youngest daughter, walking freely through our halls. It's being seen as weakness, or worse, as conspiracy. I am the king. I do not answer to their paranoia." "You are the king," Lucien agreed, stepping fully into the room, "which is why your actions carry weight beyond personal preference. If you're protecting this human, you need to ask yourself why." Qarith turned to face him, his crimson eyes blazing. "Careful, old friend. I've served you for 300 years, Qarith. I've earned the right to speak plainly. What is she to you?" The question hung in the air between them. What was Zariah Crawford to him? A curiosity, an anomaly. A girl who saw beauty where others saw monsters. A girl who made him remember what it felt like to want something beyond power and blood and endless night. "She's innocent," Qarith said finally. "She knows nothing of what her family does. She's a scholar, nothing more. She's a Crawford. That blood runs true. When she discovers what you are, what we are, she'll turn on you like all the others. Her family has slaughtered thousands of our kind. I am aware of the history. Then end this before it ends badly. Either kill her or compel her to forget, but stop inviting her into our world." Qarith's jaw tightened. "I have given no such invitation, yet she keeps coming back. The wards should stop her." Any human should feel compelled to turn away, to forget the entrance exists, but she walks through them like they're not even there. Have you considered what that might mean? He had considered it, extensively. There were very few explanations for how a human could bypass vampire wards. Either she possessed magical ability of her own, which seemed unlikely given her complete ignorance of the supernatural world, or she was meant to find them, fated by forces even older than vampire magic. The concept of fate had always seemed romantic nonsense to Qarith. He had lived too long to believe in destiny. And yet, "I will handle the council," Qarith said dismissively. "You needn't concern yourself with my decisions." Lucien's expression darkened. "Marcus Crawford is planning something. Our spies report increased activity among the Sovereign Guard. Training intensifying, weapons being stockpiled. They're preparing for war, Qarith. And if they discover you've been entertaining his daughter, they'll use it as justification for whatever they're planning. Then we prepare as well. Summon the clan leaders. If the Crawfords want war, we'll give them one they'll never forget." After Lucien departed, Qarith moved to the window of his chamber. Not a real window. Of course, they were too deep underground for that. But a spelled glass that showed the world above, the city at night, lights glittering like earthbound stars. He had watched this city grow from a small settlement to a sprawling metropolis, had seen centuries of human progress from his hidden vantage point. Somewhere up there, Zariah was sleeping. He could find her if he wanted to. He knew where the Crawfords lived, in their fortified compound on the edge of the city, protected by wards of their own and armed guards who knew exactly what to look for in the dark. She would be in her room, perhaps, dreaming of art and history, completely unaware that she was the eye of a storm that had been building for generations. He should forget her. He should strengthen the wards, ensure she couldn't find her way back. He should focus on the coming conflict with the Sovereign Guard, on protecting his people from the hunters who wanted them extinct. But even as he thought these things, he knew he would do none of them, because when Zariah looked at him, she didn't see a monster. She didn't see 4 centuries of death and darkness. She saw something worth admiring, worth knowing, and that feeling, that simple human appreciation, had awakened something in him that he thought had died long ago. The next evening, Qarith was in the throne room addressing the council when the alarm bells began to ring. Not literal bells, but a psychic warning that rippled through the court of shadows, alerting every vampire to the presence of an intruder. An intruder who smelled like honey and rain and forbidden fascination. Qarith was on his feet instantly, moving with the supernatural speed of his kind. He found Zariah in the eastern corridor, surrounded by 4 of his guards, their fangs bared and eyes hungry. She had dropped her notebook, papers scattered at her feet, her back pressed against the stone wall. For the first time since he had met her, she looked truly afraid. "Stand down," Qarith commanded, his voice echoing with the power of his authority. The guards immediately stepped back, though their expressions remained wary. Zariah's gaze found his relief and confusion warring in her features. "I'm sorry," she said breathlessly. "I know I should have waited for you, but I found a reference in an old text about underground murals, and I thought maybe they were here, and I got excited, and I just..." She trailed off, finally seeming to register the fangs, the inhuman grace of the guards, the way they all looked at her like a predator might look at wounded prey. "What's going on?" Qarith moved to her side, placing himself between her and his guards. "Leave us," he told them. "My king, the council," one of them protested. "I said leave." They obeyed, melting back into the shadows. Zariah bent to gather her scattered papers, her hands shaking slightly. Qarith knelt to help her, their fingers brushing as they both reached for the same sheet. The contact sent a jolt through him, electric and undeniable. "I don't understand," Zariah said quietly. "Why did they look at me like that? And their teeth I saw they had." She stopped, shaking her head. "I'm imagining things." "The lighting down here, it plays tricks." "You're not imagining anything," Qarith said, making a decision that would change everything. "Zariah, look at me." She did, those warm honey eyes meeting his crimson gaze. He let her see him truly. Drop the subtle glamour that made humans perceive vampires as merely pale and unusual. Let her see the otherworldly nature of him, the predator beneath the beauty. "You're not human," she whispered. "You're something else. Something I don't have a name for. Vampire," he supplied gently. "I am vampire. This entire place, everyone you've met here, we are the creatures from your stories and nightmares. We are what your father hunts." He watched her process this, saw the moment of denial, then the reluctant acceptance. She was intelligent. He knew. She would fit the pieces together quickly. "My father doesn't hunt anything. He runs a security company." "Your father leads the Sovereign Guard, an organization dedicated to eradicating my kind from existence. They have been our sworn enemies for over 800 years, and you, Zariah Crawford, are the youngest daughter of the man who wants me dead." She stood abruptly, backing away from him. "That's insane. Vampires aren't real. They're folklore, mythology. We are very real, and very dangerous, especially to you. Are you going to kill me?" Her voice was surprisingly steady despite the fear he could smell rolling off her in waves. "If I wanted you dead, you would have been dead the first night you stumbled into my court. I am Qarith Silvanus, king of the Noctis clan, ruler of this territory, and you have been trespassing in my domain for 3 weeks now. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me keep coming back?" It was the question he had been asking himself. Why had he allowed this? Why had he broken every rule, ignored every warning instinct? "Because when you look at me, you see something other than a monster," he said honestly, "and I have not felt seen in a very long time." Zariah stared at him, and he watched her trembling slow, watched her mind work through the impossible situation. "Show me," she said finally. "Show you what? Prove it. Prove you're a vampire. Because this is either real, or I'm having some kind of breakdown, and I need to know which." Qarith moved faster than human eyes could track, appearing behind her. She gasped, spinning around. He caught her wrist gently, turning her hand palm up, and ran one elongated fang carefully along her lifeline. Not cutting, just demonstrating. Then he smiled, letting her see the full predator in his expression, the fangs that could tear through flesh like paper. "We are stronger, faster, nearly immortal," he explained softly, releasing her hand. "We require blood to survive. Sunlight burns us. Religious symbols have no effect, that's a myth, but silver and certain woods can harm us. We can mesmerize humans with a glance, compel them to forget or obey. We've existed in the shadows of human civilization since the beginning of recorded history. And my father hunts you, hunts us, murders us, burns our havens, and destroys our families. The Sovereign Guard has killed thousands of my people over the centuries, Zariah. Your family name is spoken with hatred in every vampire clan across the world." She processed this, and he could see the moment she made another connection. "That's why you said our families were enemies. That's why you said you should have killed me." "Yes, but you didn't." She looked up at him, and there was something in her expression that made his dead heart ache. "Why? I told you." "When you look at me, no," she interrupted. "The real reason. There has to be more than that." Qarith was silent for a long moment. How could he explain something he barely understood himself? How could he tell her that in 400 years of existence, she was the first person who had made him feel something other than the weight of responsibility and the emptiness of endless night? "You wandered into my world with curiosity instead of hatred," he said carefully. "You saw beauty in this place that most humans would find terrifying. You asked questions about art and history, treating me as if I were a person worth knowing rather than a creature to be destroyed. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How singular? I didn't know what you were, and now you do. So the question becomes, Zariah Crawford, what will you do with this knowledge?" She wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive gesture that made her seem younger than her 22 years. "I don't know. I need to think. I should go." "You can't tell your family about this place," Qarith said firmly. "If the Sovereign Guard learns of this court's location, they will attack. Hundreds of vampires live here, Zariah. Families, children, we are not all monsters. Most of us simply want to exist in peace. You drink blood. You kill people. We drink blood, yes. But we have not needed to kill to feed for over a century. There are willing donors, blood banks, alternatives. The old ways are just that, old. Most modern vampires follow strict codes of conduct. We police our own kind, punish those who break our laws. We are not the mindless killers your father believes us to be. How do I know you're telling the truth?" "You don't," he admitted. "You have only my word, and I am aware that should mean little given our circumstances. But I am asking you to trust what you've seen with your own eyes these past weeks. Have I or anyone in this court harmed you, threatened you, or did we treat you with courtesy and respect?" Zariah was quiet, thinking. Finally, she said, "I won't tell anyone." "Not yet, but I need time to process this. I need to understand what this means." "That's reasonable," Qarith agreed, though every instinct screamed at him to compel her silence, to ensure she could never betray them. But he wouldn't do that to her. Wouldn't violate her mind or her will. "I'll escort you out. And Zariah? The wards should keep you away now that I've strengthened them. For your own safety, don't try to come back. Are you banishing me? I'm protecting you. If the council learns how much you know, they will demand your death, and I am not certain I can stop them, treaty or no treaty." He walked her through the tunnels, both of them silent. At the exit, she paused, looking back at him. "Qarith," she said, his name sounding strange and right on her lips. "If everything you've told me is true, if your people really do live peacefully now, why do the Sovereign Guard still hunt you?" "Because hatred dies hard," he replied. "Because generations of your family have been raised to believe we are evil incarnate, and changing that belief would mean admitting to centuries of murder. Because it's easier to see monsters than to acknowledge that the world is more complicated than they wish it to be. That's what my father does? He murders vampires? He has killed more of my kind than perhaps any other human alive. He is very good at what he does, Zariah, and he believes he is righteous in doing it." She flinched as if struck. "I need to go. I know. Be safe, Zariah Crawford, and forget about vampires. Forget about me. Live your human life and be happy." She didn't respond, just turned and walked away into the night. Qarith watched until she disappeared from sight, then returned to his court. Where the council was waiting with accusations and demands, the next week was torture. Qarith immersed himself in preparations for potential conflict with the Sovereign Guard, meeting with the other clan leaders, strengthening defenses, trying to determine what Marcus Crawford was planning. But his mind kept drifting to Zariah, wondering if she was safe, if she had kept her word about silence, if she was thinking about him the way he couldn't stop thinking about her. Lucian noticed, of course. "You're distracted," he said one evening as they reviewed security protocols. "The Crawford girl?" "I haven't seen her in 8 days, Qarith replied tersely. "The matter is resolved, is it? Because you look like a vampire in mourning, and I've never seen you like this over anyone, let alone a human. Let alone a Crawford. Your point, Lucian?" "My point is that I'm worried about you. In 4 centuries, I've watched you bear the weight of leadership without complaint. You've sacrificed everything personal for the good of our people. You've never allowed yourself attachment or distraction, and now this human girl walks into your life and suddenly you're different, softer, vulnerable. I am not vulnerable, Qarith said coldly. You're in love with her. The words landed like a blow. Qarith stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. Don't be absurd. I barely know her, and yet you can't stop thinking about her. You've turned down 3 blood donors this week. You stand at that spelled window every night, staring at the city above as if you could see her through stone and distance. If that's not love, it's the closest thing to it you've experienced in your long life. Qarith wanted to deny it, wanted to rage at the accusation, but he couldn't, because some part of him recognized the truth in Lucien's words. It doesn't matter, he said finally. She's human. She's a Crawford. There is no future in which this ends well. Then end it completely. Compel her to forget. Remove the threat and the temptation both. I won't violate her that way. Then you do love her. Lucien sighed, moving to stand beside him. Qarith, I say this as your friend. If you're going to pursue this impossibility, you need to be prepared for the consequences. The council won't allow it. The other clans won't allow it. And Marcus Crawford certainly won't allow it. If this becomes known, it will mean war. I'm not pursuing anything. I sent her away. But you want to see her again. He did. More than was wise or safe or sane. He wanted to hear her voice, to watch her face light up with enthusiasm over some historical detail, to be in the presence of someone who had looked at him and seen not a king or a monster, but simply someone worth knowing. What I want is irrelevant, Qarith said. I am king. My duty is to my people, not to my personal desires. Your father said the same thing once, Lucien said quietly, sacrificed everything for duty. And he died bitter and alone, having never known a moment of true happiness. Is that the legacy you want? Before Qarith could respond, the alarm bells rang again. His head snapped up, senses immediately reaching out. Intruder. Multiple intruders. The smell of silver and holy water and burning hatred. The Sovereign Guard, he said, already moving. They've found us. The Court of Shadows erupted into controlled chaos. Vampires rushed to defensive positions, sealing the inner chambers where their vulnerable population sheltered. Qarith reached the main hall to find a dozen armed humans forcing their way through the entrance, weapons designed specifically to kill his kind gleaming in their hands. And at the front of the group, silver sword in hand, was Marcus Crawford. He looked like an older, harder version of his daughter. Same dark hair, though streaked with gray. Same bone structure, though carved by decades of violence into something severe. His eyes were cold where Zariah's were warm, filled with hatred where hers held curiosity. Qarith Silvanus, Marcus said, his voice echoing through the hall. In the name of the Sovereign Guard and the protection of humanity, I hereby declare this coven dissolved. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. You have no authority here, Crawford, Qarith replied, his voice deadly calm despite the rage building in his chest. You violate the treaty by entering this place uninvited. The treaty is void. We have evidence that you've been conspiring with outside forces, that you've been influencing human minds, that you've been breaking every agreement between our people. You've left us no choice but to act. What evidence? What lies have you concocted to justify this invasion? Marcus smiled, cold and cruel. You've been seen with my daughter, multiple times. You've lured her here, corrupted her. Did you think I wouldn't notice her strange behavior? Her sudden interest in this particular cathedral? I had her followed, vampire. I know everything. Qarith's blood ran cold. Your daughter stumbled upon this place by accident. I sent her away. She knows nothing of our conflict. She knows enough. You've compromised her, which means you've compromised everything. I should kill you just for speaking to her. I did not harm her, Qarith said, fighting to keep his voice level. Nor would I ever. She is innocent in all of this. My daughters are none of your concern, Marcus snarled. Now, you can surrender and face execution, or you can resist and watch your entire coven burn. Your choice. Qarith felt his fangs descend fully, felt the predator in him rise to meet the threat. Around him, his court prepared for battle. This was it. The war they had been dreading for generations, finally erupting into the open. I will not surrender my people to your murderous hatred, Qarith said. If you want war, Marcus Crawford, then war you shall have. Dad, stop! The voice cut through the tension like a blade. Everyone turned to see Zariah running into the hall, breathless and panicked. She positioned herself between the two groups, arms spread as if she could physically hold back the violence. Zariah, get out of here, Marcus commanded. This doesn't concern you. It does concern me. You lied to me. Everything you told me about what you do, it was all lies. I protected you from the truth because you're too naive to understand. These creatures are monsters. They kill without remorse. They're not like us. They've been nothing but kind to me. Zariah shot back. I've been coming here for weeks, Dad. Weeks! If they wanted to hurt me, they could have. But they didn't. They treated me with respect and courtesy. which is more than I can say for you right now. Marcus's face darkened. You've been coming here? For weeks? What has he done to you? Has he fed from you? Compelled you? He's done nothing except answer my questions and treat me like an intelligent adult, which, again, more than you've ever done. You don't know what you're talking about, Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. These things killed your uncle. They murdered my brother in cold blood when you were just a child. They're evil, Zariah. One vampire killed Uncle Thomas, Zariah said, and Qarith realized she had been researching, learning on her own. One rogue who was hunted down by his own kind and executed according to vampire law. You've been using that tragedy to justify genocide ever since. It's not genocide to eliminate monsters. They're people, Zariah shouted. They have families, children. They live and love and create beautiful things. I've seen it, Dad. I've seen their art, their culture, their community. You're the one who's monstrous, breaking in here with weapons, threatening to murder hundreds of innocent beings. Marcus raised his sword, pointing it not at Qarith, but at his own daughter. Step aside, Zariah. Now, that's an order. No, I will not hesitate to go through you if I must. These creatures have corrupted you, turned you against your own family, but I can undo that damage. Step aside and let me do what needs to be done. Qarith moved before conscious thought, appearing beside Zariah, pulling her behind him. You will not touch her, he said, his voice dropping to a lethal growl. Threaten her again, and treaty be damned. I will tear you apart with my bare hands. So it's true, Marcus said, something like grim satisfaction crossing his face. You've claimed her. You've made my daughter into your pet. I have claimed nothing. I am protecting her from your violence, which apparently someone needs to do. Touching, Marcus spat, but futile. Men take them both. The Sovereign Guard surged forward. Qarith's court met them with inhuman speed and strength. The hall erupted into chaos, the clash of silver weapons against supernatural force echoing off the ancient stones. Qarith kept Zariah behind him, fending off attacks while trying not to kill anyone. The treaty might be broken, but he would not be the one to deal the final death blow. Then he saw Marcus moving toward them, sword raised, eyes fixed on Zariah, with an expression that spoke of terrible purpose. He understood in that moment that Marcus meant to kill his own daughter, rather than allow her to be corrupted by vampire influence. No. Qarith threw himself between them as Marcus's blade descended. The silver cut deep into his shoulder, burning like acid, and he felt his knees buckle. Behind him, Zariah screamed. Around them, the fighting intensified as vampires reacted to their king being wounded. Cease! Lucien's voice rang out, amplified by vampire magic. Cease, or we kill every human in this room. The fighting stopped. Marcus's guards found themselves held by supernatural strength, weapons torn from their hands. Marcus himself stood frozen, his blade still embedded in Qarith's shoulder. You will withdraw, Lucien continued, his eyes blazing with fury. You will take your men and leave this place, and if you ever return, we will show no mercy. The treaty is broken, Crawford. From this day forward, there is war between us, but it will be war on our terms, at a time and place of our choosing. Now go. Marcus pulled his blade free and Qarith collapsed. Zariah caught him, her hands pressing against the wound that smoked and burned from the silver. She was crying, he realized distantly, crying for him. You're making a mistake, Zariah, Marcus said. But his voice had lost some of its conviction. He's a monster. He'll destroy you. Get out, Zariah said, her voice shaking but firm. Get out and don't come back. You're not my father anymore. My father would never threaten to kill his own daughter. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, something like pain crossing his features. Then he turned and led his men out. The moment they were gone, Lucien sealed the entrance with magic, reinforcing it with spells that would keep the Sovereign Guard out indefinitely. Get him to his chambers, Lucien ordered. Remove the silver, he'll heal. Zariah helped carry Qarith, her tears falling on his face as they moved through the corridors. In his room, she stayed while Lucien and the court physician removed the blade fragments and cleaned the wound. The pain was excruciating, silver being one of the few substances that could cause lasting harm to vampires, but Qarith bore it in silence. When the others finally left them alone, Zariah sat on the edge of his bed, holding his hand. You almost died, she whispered. Because of me. I would do it again, Qarith said, his voice weak but steady. I could not let him harm you. Why? Why would you risk yourself for me? We barely know each other, because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be more than a king, he said honestly. Because you see me, Zariah, not the monster, not the ruler, not the enemy, just me. And that is a gift beyond price. She leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I should never have come back. I should have stayed away. I'm glad you didn't. These past weeks, speaking with you, learning what brings light to your eyes, it has been the most alive I've felt in centuries. Whatever comes of this, I cannot regret it. My father will come back, she said. He won't stop until you're dead. And I've made everything worse by defying him. You stood up for what you believed was right. That takes courage. Your father is blinded by hatred, but perhaps in time, with your influence, he might learn to see differently. I can't go back there. He'll lock me away or worse. He thinks I've been compromised, corrupted. He'll never listen to me now. Then stay here, Qarith said. Stay with us. With me. We can protect you. I'm human. I don't belong in your world. You've been part of it since the moment you walked through those doors. Perhaps longer. Lucienne believes you were meant to find us, that fate brought you here. Do you believe in fate? Zariah asked softly. Qarith looked at her, at the way the low light caught in her dark hair, at the warmth in her eyes even as she cried, at the fierce protectiveness she had shown for people she barely knew. This woman who had defended vampires to her own father. This woman who had stayed by his side as he bled from a silver wound. This woman who had somehow become essential to him in a matter of weeks. I didn't, he admitted. But I'm beginning to. She stayed with him through the night as he healed, talking softly about inconsequential things, distracting him from the pain. And Qarith listened, memorizing every word, every gesture, knowing that something fundamental had changed between them. By morning, the wound had closed enough for him to move without agony. He found Zariah asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand still holding his. He watched her sleep, human and fragile and impossibly brave, and felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt in 400 years. Not the dull ache of loneliness, not the heavy weight of responsibility, but something warm and light and terrifying in its intensity. Lucienne had been right. He was in love with her, and that love would likely doom them both. When Zariah woke, she found Qarith standing at his spelled window, dressed in fresh clothes, looking every inch the vampire king, despite the lingering weakness from his injury. You should rest more, she said, rising from the chair and wincing at the stiffness in her back. I've rested enough. The court needs to see that I'm recovered. They're frightened, and rightfully so. The Sovereign Guard knows our location now. We'll need to relocate eventually, but that will take time and careful planning. I'm sorry, Zariah said again. This is because of me. This was inevitable, Qarith replied. Turning to face her, the peace between our peoples has always been fragile, maintained through fear and distance rather than understanding. Your father simply found an excuse to break what was already cracked. What happens now? Now we prepare. If there is to be war, we will not face it unprepared. But Zariah, you need to make a choice. You cannot exist between both worlds. If you stay here, you will be seen as a traitor by your kind. You will never be able to return to your human life. And if I leave, then you leave. I will not hold you prisoner. But you should know that if you go, I cannot guarantee your safety. Your father believes you've been corrupted. Other members of the Sovereign Guard may see you as compromised, a security risk. And I cannot protect you if you're not within these walls. Zariah moved to stand beside him at the window, looking up at the city above. Somewhere up there was the life she had known. The museum job, her small apartment, her friends, who knew nothing of the supernatural world. It would be so easy to go back, to pretend none of this had happened, to forget about vampires and wars and the impossible feelings growing in her heart. I don't want to go, she said quietly. I don't want to return to a life where I have to pretend I don't know the truth, where I have to accept that my father is a mass murderer who believes he's righteous, where I can never see you again. Qarith's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. Then stay. Help me build peace instead of war. You understand both worlds. You could be a bridge between our peoples. You think I could change centuries of hatred? I think you already have. You changed me. She turned to look at him, and the intensity in his crimson eyes took her breath away. Qarith, what is this between us? What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted. I only know that when I'm with you, the weight of centuries feels lighter. I know that I would face down your father's blade again without hesitation if it meant keeping you safe. I know that in 400 years, no one has ever made me feel the way you do. How do I make you feel? Human, he said softly. You make me feel human again, connected to something beyond duty and darkness. You make me hope for things I thought I had forgotten how to want. What things? Instead of answering with words, Qarith cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was gentle, careful, as if she were something precious that might break. Zariah made a soft sound of surprise, then melted into him, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart beating, slow and steady, could feel the coolness of his skin, so different from her own warmth, could feel the barely restrained power in him, the predator held in check by sheer force of will. When they finally parted, both breathless, Zariah rested her forehead against his. "This is insane," she whispered. "We're enemies. This can't work." "I know. My father will try to kill you. Your people will never accept me. I know. But I can't seem to make myself care about any of that. Neither can I," Qarith said, pulling her closer. "Stay with me, Zariah. Let me show you my world. Let me court you properly, the way you deserve. And if at any point you wish to leave, I will let you go. But give us a chance. Give this impossible thing a chance to become real. What if it all falls apart? What if loving each other makes everything worse? Then at least we will have known love," Qarith said. "I have lived 4 centuries without it. I do not wish to live another day the same way." Zariah kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring all her complicated feelings into it. Fear and hope and desire, and the strange certainty that despite everything telling her this was wrong, it felt more right than anything in her life ever had. "Okay," she said when they finally broke apart. "I'll stay. I'll try. But Qarith, I'm human. I'm going to age and die while you stay young forever. I'm fragile and mortal and completely out of my depth in your world. How can this possibly work long term?" "There are ways," Qarith said carefully. "In time, if you choose it, you could be turned. You could become one of us. But that is a decision not to be made lightly, and not for many years yet. For now, let us simply be together. Let us learn each other. The future will come whether we plan for it or not." So Zariah stayed. She moved into Qarith's chambers, which scandalized some members of the court and delighted others. She began to truly learn about vampire society, the complex hierarchies and ancient customs, the laws and traditions that govern their kind. She met families who had lived together for centuries, saw children who had been turned young and would never age, witnessed the strange beauty of a culture that existed in the margins of human history, and every day she fell more deeply in love with their king. Qarith courted her with a formality that was both charming and slightly absurd. He brought her gifts from the court's extensive collection of art and antiquities, spent hours discussing history with her, showing her the ways vampire culture had influenced human development over millennia. He taught her their language, an ancient tongue that predated most human civilizations. He introduced her to the concept of vampire magic, the subtle ways they could influence the world around them. He was patient and attentive, protective, but never controlling. He asked her opinion on matters of state, valued her human perspective when dealing with conflicts between vampires and humans. He treated her as an equal, even as his court struggled to understand how their king could love a human. The nights were the hardest part. Vampires were nocturnal by nature, and while Qarith could function during the day in the underground court, his strength and vitality peaked after sunset. Zariah found herself adjusting her sleep schedule, staying awake through the night to be with him, sleeping during the day in his bed while he attended to his duties. She learned what it meant to be loved by a vampire, the intensity of it, the possessiveness that Qarith tried to temper but couldn't fully hide, the way his eyes tracked her whenever she entered a room, the low growl that rumbled in his chest when other vampires got too close to her, the careful way he touched her, always aware of his strength, always conscious that he could hurt her so easily. She learned, too, that vampire bites were not always violent. One evening, as they lay together in his chambers, Qarith had asked permission to taste her blood. Not to feed, he had been careful to specify, but to know her in the most intimate way vampires could know another being. Zariah had been nervous but curious. She trusted him completely by then, so she had agreed. The bite itself had hurt less than she expected. A sharp sting that faded quickly into something else entirely. She felt the pull of him drawing her blood, felt the way his body responded to the taste of her, felt an unexpected rush of pleasure that made her gasp. When he sealed the wound with his tongue, the healing magic in his saliva closing the punctures instantly, they had come together with a desperate passion that surprised them both. Afterward, Qarith had held her close, stroking her hair. "You taste like sunshine," he had murmured, "like everything I can never have in daylight hours, like hope itself." "Is it always like that?" Zariah asked, still trembling from the intensity of the experience. "The biting? Between bonded pairs, yes. Between vampire and willing human who love each other, the exchange of blood can be transcendent. It's why we guard such moments carefully. Why consent is sacred among my kind. Will you need to feed from me regularly? No, I have other sources. I would only ever take from you in moments of intimacy, with your permission. Your blood is too precious to waste on mere sustenance." 3 months passed in this strange new life. Zariah was happier than she had ever been, despite the complications. She missed sunlight sometimes, missed the casual freedom of her old life. But what she had found with Qarith was worth those sacrifices. The court slowly began to accept her presence. Lucien remained cautious, but had warmed to her after she helped negotiate a dispute between two vampire families, using principles of mediation she had learned in university. Other court members saw how she made their king happy, saw his willingness to smile and laugh in her presence, and decided that perhaps a human queen was not the worst thing that could happen. But outside the Court of Shadows, tensions were escalating. The Sovereign Guard had indeed declared open war. They attacked vampire havens across the city, destroying several smaller covens before the vampires could relocate. Humans loyal to the Sovereign Guard spread propaganda about vampire attacks, real and fabricated. The fragile coexistence between species was crumbling. Qarith tried to maintain restraint, ordering his people to defend themselves but not to retaliate with lethal force. He believed that escalation would only worsen the situation, that eventually calmer heads might prevail. But his patience was wearing thin, especially as the death toll on the vampire side continued to rise. One night, Zariah woke to find Qarith's side of the bed empty. She found him in his study, surrounded by reports from across the city, his expression bleak. "Another haven burned," he said without preamble. 12 vampires dead, 5 of them children. Zariah moved to his side, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "I'm so sorry. Your father did this. He led the raid personally." She flinched but didn't let go. "He's wrong. What he's doing is wrong. He believes he's saving humanity. In his mind, every vampire he kills is a threat neutralized. He doesn't see them as people. Just monsters to be eliminated. Let me talk to him," Zariah said suddenly. "Let me try to make him understand. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. He's my father. He won't hurt me. He threatened to kill you 3 months ago, Zariah. Or have you forgotten? He was angry and confused, but he's had time to think since then. Maybe he'll listen to me now. Maybe I can make him see reason." Qarith turned in her arms, his hands coming up to frame her face. "I cannot lose you. I will not risk you. We can't let this war continue. More people will die, both vampire and human. If there's even a chance I can stop it, I have to try. Then I'm coming with you. That defeats the purpose. He needs to see me alone. Needs to believe I'm not under your influence." They argued about it for hours, but eventually Zariah wore him down. Qarith agreed to let her go to her father, but only with conditions. She would wear a tracking charm so he could find her at any moment. She would go during the day, when vampires were weakest, so her father couldn't accuse Qarith of hovering in the shadows. And she would have exactly 3 hours. If she wasn't back by then, Qarith and his entire court would come for her. Consequences be damned. 2 days later, Zariah stood outside her family's compound, her heart racing. She hadn't been here since the night everything changed. The house looked the same, imposing and fortress-like, but it no longer felt like home. The guards at the gate recognized her immediately. They looked shocked, uncertain. Finally, one of them spoke into a radio, and after a tense moment, the gates opened. Marcus Crawford was waiting in his study, the same room where he had taught Zariah to read as a child, where they had shared breakfast on Sunday mornings, where he had told her stories about her mother, who had died when Zariah was too young to remember. He looked older than she remembered, more worn. The war was taking its toll on him too. "Zariah," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You came back. I came to talk. To try to make you understand. Understand what? That you've been seduced by a monster? That you've betrayed everything your family stands for?" "I've fallen in love with a good man who happens to be a vampire," Zariah corrected. "There's a difference." "There is no difference. They're all the same. All killers. All evil. Qarith has saved my life. He's protected me, cherished me, treated me with more respect and kindness than you showed me the last time we spoke. He's a better man than you are, Dad." Marcus flinched as if she had struck him. "You don't know what you're saying. He's compelled you, manipulated your mind." "He's never compelled me, not once. I've made all my choices freely, and I choose him. I choose peace. I choose to believe that humans and vampires can coexist. They killed your uncle. One vampire killed Uncle Thomas, one rogue who was punished by his own kind. You can't judge an entire species by the actions of one individual. That's the same logic racists use, Dad. It's wrong. Don't you dare compare this to human prejudice. Vampires are not human. They're predators. So are we," Zariah shot back. "Humans kill more humans every year than vampires have killed in decades. We wage wars, commit genocides, destroy our own planet. If we're going to judge species by their capacity for violence, we don't come out looking very good either." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping you ignorant of this world. I wanted you to have a normal life, free from the burden of this fight. You were lying to me, and now you're using those lies to justify murder. I'm trying to keep people safe. By killing innocents? By burning down havens with children inside? How is that keeping anyone safe? Those children will grow into killers, or they'll grow into artists and scholars and people who just want to live in peace. You don't know. You've never given them a chance. Marcus moved to the window, looking out over the compound grounds. Your mother understood. She fought beside me before you were born. She knew what vampires were capable of. Maybe she would have understood this too, Zariah said softly. Maybe she would have seen what I see. That continuing this war serves no one. That there has to be a better way. There is no better way. They exist. We fight. That's how it's always been. Then change it. Be the one to break the cycle. Meet with Qarith. Talk to him. See for yourself that he's not the monster you believe him to be. I will never negotiate with vampires. Then you'll lose me forever, Zariah said, her voice breaking. Because I'm not coming back, Dad. I'm staying with Qarith. I'm going to help him build peace. Whether you support me or not, but I'd rather do it with your blessing than without it. Marcus turned to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes for the first time since she was a child. I don't know how to let you go. You're my daughter, my baby girl. How can I just accept that you're choosing them over us? I'm not choosing them over you. I'm choosing love over hate. I'm choosing hope over endless war. And I'm asking you to choose it too. They stood there, father and daughter, separated by an impossible gulf. Finally, Marcus spoke. I can't promise anything, but I'll think about what you've said. I'll consider the possibility that I've been wrong. That's all I can offer you right now. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Zariah crossed the room and hugged her father, feeling him stiffen before slowly relaxing into the embrace. I love you, Dad. I always will. But I love him too. And I'm going to keep loving him, no matter what you decide. I know, Marcus said, his voice rough, and that terrifies me more than anything else in this world. Zariah left the compound with Marcus's words echoing in her mind. She didn't know if she had accomplished anything, but at least she had tried. At least her father knew where she stood. When she returned to the Court of Shadows, Qarith was waiting at the entrance, barely restrained panic in his eyes. The moment he saw her, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Never again, he said fiercely. Never put yourself at risk like that again. I had to try, I know, but it nearly killed me waiting, not knowing if you were safe. She pulled back enough to look at him. He's considering it, my father. He's thinking about the possibility of peace. It's not much, but it's a start. You are remarkable, Qarith said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Absolutely remarkable. But if you ever scare me like that again, I may just lock you in these chambers and never let you out. You wouldn't! No, he admitted, but I would be tempted. Over the following weeks, something strange began to happen. The attacks from the Sovereign Guard slowed, then stopped. Marcus Crawford requested a formal meeting with Qarith under flag of truce at a neutral location. The Vampire Council was skeptical, suspecting a trap, but Qarith agreed to attend. The meeting took place in an abandoned church, neutral ground that belonged to neither species. Qarith brought Lucien and a small guard. Marcus brought his lieutenants, and Zariah stood between them, hoping desperately that she hadn't made a terrible mistake. You wanted to talk, Qarith said, his tone carefully neutral. So talk. Marcus studied him for a long moment. My daughter believes you're capable of peace. She believes your people are not the monsters I've been taught to see. I'm having difficulty accepting that. But I'm willing to listen. It was the hardest conversation Zariah had ever witnessed. Marcus asked questions about vampire nature, about their needs, about the attacks that had occurred over the years. Qarith answered honestly. Neither minimizing the violence of some vampires nor claiming his kind was innocent of all wrongdoing. He acknowledged that there were rogue vampires who killed indiscriminately, but explained that they were punished by vampire law, just as human criminals were punished by human law. They talked about Thomas, Marcus's brother. Qarith revealed that he had personally executed the vampire responsible, an ancient named Draven, who had refused to follow modern codes of conduct. He showed Marcus the records, the trial proceedings, the sentence carried out according to vampire justice. I cannot undo what was done to your brother, Qarith said, but I can promise you that it was not sanctioned by any vampire authority. Draven acted alone, and he paid for his crime with his life. We do not protect killers, Crawford. We police our own as rigorously as you police yours. Perhaps more so, given how much we have to lose if we're exposed. And what about the attacks you've carried out? The humans who've died? In the past century, vampires under my rule have killed 37 humans, Qarith said bluntly. 37 in 100 years. All but 3 were in direct self-defense, vampires fighting for their lives against Sovereign Guard raids. The other 3 were accidents, new vampires who lost control before they could be taught restraint. They too were punished. How many of my kind have you killed in the same time frame, Marcus Crawford? The number Marcus gave in response made Zariah feel sick. Hundreds. Nearly 1,000 vampires, dead at the hands of the Sovereign Guard. We thought we were at war, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. We thought we were protecting humanity. From what? From people who simply want to exist? Who have families and homes and lives just as you do? You started this war, Crawford. Centuries ago, your ancestor decided we were abominations and began hunting us. We've been defending ourselves ever since. We've been dying ever since. And for what? What has all this bloodshed accomplished? Marcus had no answer for that. The meeting ended without resolution, but with an agreement to meet again, and again after that. Over the course of 3 months, Marcus Crawford and Qarith Silvanus built something that had never existed between their peoples. A tentative understanding. It wasn't peace, not yet. There were too many wounds on both sides, too much history to overcome. But it was a beginning. Marcus agreed to call off the Sovereign Guard attacks. Qarith agreed to share information about rogue vampires, to work with the Sovereign Guard to eliminate threats to humanity. They established a communication channel, a way to resolve conflicts without violence. And slowly, impossibly, the war began to wind down. 6 months after the first meeting, Marcus Crawford came to the Court of Shadows, not as an invader, but as a guest. He dined with Qarith in the Great Hall, surrounded by vampires who watched him with wary but curious eyes. Zariah sat between them, her heart full of hope for the first time in months. I was wrong, Marcus said halfway through the evening. About many things, about your kind, about the necessity of this conflict. I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I can try to do better going forward. That's all any of us can do, Qarith replied. Try to be better than we were. Marcus turned to his daughter, and I was wrong about him, about Qarith. He's not a monster. He's a man who loves my daughter and treats her well. That's all a father can really ask for. Zariah felt tears streaming down her face. Dad, I still don't understand how this happened, Marcus continued. How you two found each other across centuries of hatred, but I can see that it's real, and I'm grateful that you're happy, even if I wish circumstances were different. Thank you, Zariah whispered. That means everything to me. After Marcus left, Qarith pulled Zariah into his arms. We did it, he said, wonder in his voice. We actually did it. We ended a war. We started something, Zariah corrected. The real work comes now, building trust. Creating systems for cooperation, making sure this peace lasts ever, the scholar. Qarith teased, kissing her temple. Always thinking ahead. Someone has to. You're too busy being romantic and dramatic. I am a vampire king. Drama is part of my nature. They laughed together, and in that moment, surrounded by the stone walls of the Court of Shadows, Zariah felt completely at peace. She had found her place, here in the darkness with the man she loved. She had helped build something meaningful, something that would outlast both of them. 1 year after Zariah first wandered into the Court of Shadows, Qarith called a formal gathering of the vampire clans. Representatives came from across the world, ancient vampires who had lived through countless human conflicts, who had seen civilizations rise and fall. They came to witness something unprecedented, the formal bonding of their king to a human. The ceremony was a blend of human and vampire tradition, conducted in the Great Hall with hundreds of witnesses. Zariah wore white, though not a traditional wedding dress. Instead, she wore a gown designed in the vampire style, elegant and flowing, with silver embroidery that caught the light of the luminescent crystals. Qarith wore the formal regalia of his position, black and silver, his white hair unbound and flowing past his shoulders. Marcus Crawford attended, standing in the front row beside Lucienne, the two of them an unlikely pair. But they had become something like friends over the past months, united in their desire to protect Zariah and to maintain the fragile peace they had built. Qarith spoke first, his voice carrying through the hall. Zariah Crawford came into my life like dawn, breaking over a world that had known only night. She showed me that hatred was not inevitable, that peace was possible, that love could exist across any divide. She is my heart, my hope, my reason for believing in a better future. I pledge myself to her for as long as she will have me in this life and whatever may come after. Then Zariah spoke, her voice steady despite her nerves. Qarith Silvanus taught me that courage comes in many forms, that protecting others is the highest calling, that love is not about similarity but about truly seeing each other, accepting each other completely. He is my home, my safe place, my greatest adventure. I pledge myself to him for all the time we have, in this world and beyond. The bonding was sealed with an exchange of blood, a vampire tradition that would link them spiritually. Qarith bit his own wrist, offering it to Zariah. She drank, the taste of his blood strange and powerful, feeling it spread through her like liquid fire. Then he took from her in turn, sealing the bond between them. When it was complete, they were declared bonded mates, a recognition that would last as long as they both lived. The court erupted in celebration. Vampires and the handful of humans present alike cheering for their king and his chosen queen. At the reception, Marcus pulled Zariah aside. "Are you happy?" he asked simply. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," she replied honestly. "Then I did something right, raising you. You turned out strong and brave and willing to fight for what you believe in. Your mother would be proud. I know I am." They hugged, and Zariah felt the last piece of her heart settle into place. She had her father's blessing. She had Qarith's love. She had a purpose and a home and a future full of possibility. The years that followed were not easy. Building lasting peace required constant work. There were setbacks, conflicts, moments when old hatreds threatened to resurface. But Zariah and Qarith faced them together, united in their commitment to the world they were creating. Zariah became an ambassador of sorts, traveling between vampire courts and human communities, building bridges, facilitating understanding. She worked with the Sovereign Guard to establish protocols for dealing with rogue vampires, ensuring that justice could be served without wholesale slaughter. She helped create educational programs, teaching humans about vampire culture and teaching vampires about modern human society. Qarith proved to be more than just a warrior king. He was a diplomat, a visionary, a leader who inspired his people to reach for something better than survival. Together, he and Zariah built institutions that would outlast them, frameworks for cooperation that would endure. On her 30th birthday, Qarith asked Zariah the question he had been avoiding for years. "Do you want to be turned? Do you want to become vampire and live with me for centuries instead of decades?" She had known this moment would come. They had discussed it before, but always in abstract terms. Now it was real, immediate, a choice that would define the rest of her existence. "I don't know," she admitted. "I love you. I want to be with you as long as possible. But becoming vampire means giving up sunlight forever. Means watching all my human friends and family age and die while I stay frozen. Means becoming something fundamentally different from what I am now. I would never pressure you," Qarith assured her. "Whatever you choose, I will love you. Whether we have 50 more years or 500 more, I will treasure every moment. Can I have time to think about it?" "Take all the time you need." She thought about it for a year, weighing the options. She talked to vampires who had been turned, asked about their experiences. She talked to her father, who had grown old while she remained young, who understood what she would be giving up. In the end, the choice was simpler than she expected. She loved Qarith. She loved the work they were doing together. She loved this life they had built. And she wanted more of it, as much as she could have. On her 31st birthday, Qarith turned her. The transformation was agony. 3 days of her human body dying while her vampire nature emerged. But Qarith stayed with her through every moment, holding her, soothing her, anchoring her to herself when she thought she might lose her mind to the pain. When she finally opened her eyes as a vampire, the world was different. Colors were sharper, sounds were clearer, scents were overwhelming in their complexity. She could hear heartbeats from rooms away, could sense the life force of every living thing in the court, and she was strong, stronger than she had ever imagined, power thrumming through her veins. But the most significant change was the bond between her and Qarith. What had been strong before was now absolute, unbreakable. She could feel his emotions as if they were her own, could sense his presence even when he was far away. They were connected in a way that transcended physical proximity. "How do you feel?" Qarith asked, watching her with anxious hope. Zariah looked at herself in the mirror, seeing her reflection transformed. Her skin was pale now, alabaster white like Qarith's. Her hair had lightened, streaked with white that caught the light. Her eyes, when she met them, were crimson. She looked like a vampire, regal and dangerous and beautiful. "I feel like myself," she said, turning to him. "Only more so. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." She crossed to him, moving with the new grace and speed of her kind, and kissed him deeply. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me forever with you. Thank you for choosing it, for choosing me, for changing everything." The decades that followed were full and rich. Zariah and Qarith ruled the Noctis clan together, king and queen, partners in every sense. They watched their peace take root and spread, watched vampire-human cooperation become the norm rather than the exception. They trained the next generation of leaders, both vampire and human, teaching them that coexistence was not only possible but preferable. Marcus Crawford lived to see his granddaughter, Zariah's niece, take over leadership of the Sovereign Guard, which had transformed from a hunting organization into a peacekeeping force that worked alongside vampires to maintain order. He died in his sleep at 87, surrounded by family, content that the world he was leaving was better than the one he had been born into. Zariah grieved for her father, but she also celebrated him. He had been willing to change, to grow, to admit when he was wrong. That took a kind of courage that was rare in any species. A century after they met, Qarith and Zariah stood together in the renovated cathedral above the Court of Shadows. It was no longer a hidden place, but a monument to peace, a symbol of what could be achieved when enemies chose understanding over hatred. "Do you ever regret it?" Qarith asked, looking out over the city that had become a beacon of vampire-human cooperation. "Giving up your humanity? Giving up your mortal life?" "Not for a second," Zariah replied, leaning into him. "I gained so much more than I lost. I gained you. I gained the chance to see real change in the world. I gained forever. Forever is a long time. Not long enough," she said, turning to kiss him. "Not nearly long enough. They had built something lasting, something beautiful. Their love had been the seed from which peace had grown, proving that even the deepest hatreds could be overcome. Even the oldest wars could end. They had shown both their peoples that choice mattered more than circumstance, that love was stronger than fear, that the future was always unwritten. And they had done it together, vampire king and human-turned-vampire queen, partners across centuries. United by a love that had changed the world, their clans had warred for centuries. But Qarith had fallen for the enemy's youngest daughter, and that had made all the difference. In the grand tapestry of history, they would be remembered not for the war they ended, but for the peace they built. Not for the hatred they inherited, but for the love they chose. Not for the darkness they came from, but for the light they created together. And in the quiet moments, when they were alone in their chambers, none of that mattered. What mattered was the way he looked at her, still, after all this time. What mattered was the way she felt safe in his arms, cherished and protected and deeply loved. What mattered was that they had found each other against all odds and had refused to let anything tear them apart. "I love you," Qarith said, as he said every night, the words never losing their power or meaning. "I love you too," Zariah replied, as she always did, meaning it more with each passing year. And in the Court of Shadows, beneath the city that bustled with humans and vampires living side by side, the king and queen held each other close, grateful for every moment, treasuring their forever, knowing that they had achieved something rare and precious, a love that had healed wounds centuries old, a love that had built bridges across impossible divides, a love that had proven that happy endings were possible, even for enemies, especially for enemies who chose to see each other as something more.